Nigeria has become the first OPEC member to join the International Energy Agency as an associate member, marking a significant step in the country's engagement with global energy policymakers. Now, the move comes as the global oil market grapples with geopolitical tensions, shifting demand patterns, and OPEC Plus production adjustment. Joining us to discuss what this means for Nigeria's energy sector and the outlook for oil markets is Chukwuemeka Ozuzu, Senior Associate at AO2 Law. Thank you so much for your time, Chukwuemeka. This addition, tell us what this means, to our oil and gas space here in the country. Is it a good news? Is it something that we should be wary about?
Thank you very much for having me. Yes, so like you rightly mentioned, yesterday it was announced that Nigeria would be admitted as an associate country member of the International Energy Agency, the IEA. So in terms of what this means in practical terms, our view is that this represents a very significant development. It's a significant development in terms of the fact that Nigeria, as you know, is a member of OPEC. OPEC being the bloc that represents the oil exporting or producing countries. Now, the IEA, on the other hand, has historically always been an association that represents petroleum importers, or countries that generally are dependent on petroleum imports, or essentially consumers. So what you now have is that Nigeria has been able to form an alliance with an association of consumers. So rather than just being limited to a producer, right, Nigeria is now in a place where we are able to contribute to some of the policy discussions that form what energy policy for the rest of the world is. That is on the one side. Secondly, as you may be aware, Nigeria's application for admission to the IEA was approved on a unanimous basis. And this was on the backdrop of the fact that the IEA recognized the role that Nigeria has played so far in terms of stabilizing fuel supply, particularly in the light of the global disruptions. In addition as well, this comes on the back of a partnership that has been in the making for over 10 years now. Right, so all in all, it is something that is certainly worth commending, right? So we hope that this is going to, on a going forward basis, shape Nigeria's ability to be able to contribute to the global energy policy discussions.
And looking at exits and admissions, UAE, a couple of months back, left OPEC. Iran has also issued that, I don't want to call it a threat, but the possibility of also leaving, and then Nigeria joining the IEA. How does this play out in terms of what the global supply dynamics would be in the global energy market? Looking at the fact that Nigeria's involvement with the IEA, does that jeopardize what we have with OPEC?
I mean, our view is that it does not. It doesn't jeopardize it. Rather, it complements the arrangements that we have with OPEC. Because like I mentioned, OPEC is the bloc that represents exporting countries, whereas the IEA is the bloc that represents countries that generally import, right? So what Nigeria's role would be some sort of a bridge building capacity, because Nigeria is the first OPEC country to join the IEA in any capacity. Mark you, the IEA maintains membership in different cadres. So if for the countries that are not part of the OECD, which Nigeria is not part of, we are only able to join the IEA as an associate country, which is what Nigeria has done. So in terms of how this would interplay with our role as a member of OPEC, what it will do in our view is that it's going to serve as a bridge building platform so that Nigeria is able to have a seat at the table on both sides of the divide, on the side of the exporting bloc and on the side of the importing bloc. So it definitely complements our role in OPEC.
All right, why I asked this question is because we're playing the divide and rule here, because looking at what Dangote has done, that has reduced our importation of refined products into the country. And at the time where we were heavily importing products, petroleum products into the country, joining the IEA would have made some level of sense. But now at the time when we're looking to reduce or totally cut off importation of any form of energy products, I'm trying to understand how this whole comes to play here.
Yeah, so the point to note is that, I mean, the IEA's role isn't just necessarily limited to fossil fuels, right? So they drive general policy on energy sustainability, which is also something that Nigeria is working towards. For example, Nigeria has been, over in the last few years, particularly under this administration, looking to strengthen our decentralized solar capacity. So that is something that the IEA has also been able to key into and identified as one of the driving factors for admitting Nigeria into the association, as it were. So in terms of how this plays into Nigeria's energy dynamics, I mean, I think it still remains to be seen how it's going to play out ultimately in the future. But medium to short term, it appears to be a step in the right direction.
All right, a step in the right direction. And then also let's touch on what's at play in terms of the deal between Iran and the US. We see that talks have paused because of the mourning of Ayatollah. Let's look at what this, in terms of what this impact would have more on oil crude prices. We've seen that drop to $72, $71 per barrel. Are we likely going to see it drop to pre-war levels?
Potentially, yes. I mean, as of today, I believe the prices are trending even much lower than the figures that you gave, right? So, and this is all on the backdrop of the memorandum of understanding that the US and Iran executed. So that memorandum of understanding is supposed to run for a 60-day period, and that 60-day period is then supposed to provide the platform on an opportunity for more definitive terms to be negotiated. Now, while this in the immediate, the 60-day period may have been yielding some benefits, right? For example, cessation of hostilities, reduction in the prices of crude, right? But by its very nature, it is the memorandum of understanding is supposed to be for a very short period, 60 days. So that then begs the question, what happens after the 60 days period? What we've seen in the last few weeks is totally different stance from both sides. On the one hand, Iran is maintaining that after the 60-day period, they would maintain sovereignty of the Strait of Hormuz and then charge one. On the other hand, the US and its regional allies have said, no, that's not going to fly. So it still remains to be seen how all of this is going to play out in terms of how this would affect the global energy market. But in the immediate, what the cessation of hostilities has done, facilitated by the memorandum of understanding, is that it has now allowed an opportunity for dialogue to happen. Even though perhaps about a week after the memorandum of understanding was signed, we had a bit of a flare-up in the region in terms of the hostilities, but that appears to have died down now for some time. So we are hopeful that the 60-day period will provide a platform for the negotiation and finalization of definite terms that would ensure lasting stability in the sector.
Well, we can only hope that they come back to the negotiating table as quickly as possible. Anyway, thank you so much for your time, Chukwuemeka. That was Chukwuemeka Ozuzu, Senior Associate at AO2 Law.